It's been 2 years of genocide with more than 66,000 Palestinians killed. 2 years of hunger and starvation, with many now suffering a man-made famine. It's 2 years of forced displacement, yet nowhere in Gaza is safe. And 2 years of journalists being targeted, with at least 250 killed. It's 730 days of a systematic bombing campaign that has left Gaza unlivable and unrecognizable. I'm Stefanie Dekker, and this is The Stream. Now, you know him as our eyes and the ears on the ground in Gaza. You have seen his face on your screens for more than 700 days, bringing you the latest updates under unimaginable conditions. This isn't just a story that Hani is reporting on. He has lost family and friends. He has lost his home. He has been repeatedly displaced. He fears for his own children. The story you listen to him report on day in, day out is the story of his own life, the story of his Gaza.
When I think about Gaza, I don't just think about the genocide and the unfolding horror. I think of all the small things that made it home. The street that I used to walk down every morning to get to work, the cafe on the corner where the owner always knew my orders. Surprise. The little bookstore that smelled of old paper and dust, where I would lose myself for hours and just run late for work. That's the Gaza that I think about. It's not the one that is rubble now or turned into vast field of ruins. That's not my Gaza. My Gaza is all about these little things that remind me. So as these are places I was referring to, they are part of me. They are woven into my memories. They are my sense of belongings. Now as I'm displaced, I don't know if these places still exist. I don't know if the coffee shop is still standing or the bookstore might be in ruin now and turned into rubble. Or if I ever walk the street again. That's what haunts me all the time. If my Gaza, the one that I dream about all the time, that I remember most of my time here in displacement, is still the same as I left it. And displacement by itself is devastating. It's not just the physical loss, it's an emotional rupture. It's the feeling that pieces of your past, identity, and home will never be recovered again.
Now that, of course, was Hani Mahmoud, our correspondent in Gaza, and he joins us now from Deir al-Balah. Hani, it's so good to see you. Such powerful words there from you about the man behind the correspondent. I was struggling with trying to figure out how to open this conversation. Words seem futile. And I asked some of our colleagues who've watched you so tirelessly report over the last 2 years. And a lot of them, what they wanted to hear from you was like, how do you keep going? How do you wake up in the morning amidst everything that continues, the devastation, the explosions, the killings that are so personal also to you? How do you do it?
Well, thanks for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be with you and talking to you about my personal experience. And let me start by stating the fact that it's such a responsibility to be reporting from the Gaza Strip about the unfolding for the ongoing genocide for the past 720 plus days. And that is by itself the sense that there is a responsibility that you carry with you everywhere you go. It's your people that you report about. It's not just people that you happen to know. These are your family members, your colleagues, your friends, people that you build relationship with over the past years. It's people that you grew up with. Gaza is such a small place, and everyone knows everybody else here, either through work or through just social activities, or happen to go through something in your life, and you get to know people. Everywhere we go, people recognize us, and that by itself it fueled that motivation to keep going. There's also the part that Palestinians, it's time that Palestinians control their own narratives. The past years have been quite horrible in terms of how we are presented to the world, how so-called pundits and experts and media tycoons in the Western world been representing Palestinians to the point where I am so tired and everybody else of defending the fact that you are a victim, defending that you are being asked to just bow all the time and accept whatever is being told to you, or whatever you're being ordered to do. And that's the sense that no, it's time now that Palestinians control their own stories. And by the way, so far, it's just a tiny, teeny bit of what's going on the ground. There's so much stuff that cannot make it on the screen, given how sensitive it is, that it always requires viewers' discretion. But it's just, you see 1% of the 100% that we do on the ground. The other 99% goes untold because of its severity, because of its sensitivity. It's something that the mind cannot imagine, cannot just stand and look at it.
Hani, that actually segues perfectly. Forgive me, because I went through your social media a little bit, and I want to read something that you wrote on a Facebook post. And you said, "Is this the end of time? No call to prayer, no school bells, no street vendors, no children playing in the street, soccer or marbles. For 23 months, Gaza's mornings have been nothing but fighter jets, gunfire and explosions. The sounds of life have been erased and replaced by war." You continue to say, "We are not numbers. Each of us carries dreams and ambitions. Each of one of us has a family to love, protect and care for." Do you feel Palestinians have been dehumanized?
Oh, absolutely. Palestinians have been dehumanized and demonized for the past years, to the point I was just stating that you get to the point that you are tired to prove that you're human. You're tired that you're entitled to human rights. And that's some of the reactions that you get from people who are not aware, who are not familiar with what's going on. They're being judgmental all the time. They put the blames on you for whatever reasons that they have, for whatever stories that they come across, without knowing the causes behind it. I've lost many of my friends in the U.S. and elsewhere in the world, simply because they don't want to hear. They picked up everything from the time where they decided to learn about what's going on, from the time that event happened on October 7th, and it started from there, leaving behind a whole history of the reasons and all the causes that led up to what we're seeing now, and what's been unfolding for the past almost 2 years now.
Hani, that is such an important point. The Israeli PR machine, of course, very, very powerful, but the reality of what is happening in Gaza cannot be denied. We also spoke to a doctor who's currently there, Dr. Nada. She's an Australian physician, and this is an update that she sent to us.
Well, we're in Shuhada al-Aqsa now, and the situation is bad. I'm sick of saying how bad the situation everywhere we go. Unfortunately, at the south, there's nothing left as equipment. We ran out of the bases. Even in full blood count, we can't run. We don't have oxygens or monitors left. We're just building tents in every corner to try to get all the people we can from north here. This is one example. A 9-month-old Rose lost all her family members. She lost her eyes. She has a severe brain injury, and they walked her on foot from the north to the south, and we still cannot do anything for her in the south.
Hani, Dr. Nada, she says there, "I'm sick of saying how bad the situation is." Is this a sentiment that you share?
Absolutely. And it's just too much that we are seeing. I always say enough of the death and the destruction that we see on daily basis. We're talking about a systematic whole slaughter and killing of Palestinians for 2 years. Even at the time of the ceasefire back in January, all the way to March, the Israeli military did not stop targeting and killing Palestinians. Sometimes I get really worried about myself, because I don't want to get to the point where I normalize this, but my reaction so far for the past months, it changed a lot. I'm not reacting in the same way as the opening weeks of this genocide. I mean, I would see bodies being picked up from the morgue into the area where surviving family members would perform farewell prayers. And I don't react as much as I used to the opening week of this genocide. And I worry that is that part of the psychological breakdown? Is this becoming desensitized? Because there's just so much of it on daily basis.
Hani, I actually wanted to ask you about that. How mentally one copes with everything that you've experienced, which is impossible for anyone outside of Gaza to understand. And off the back of that, I want to ask you, how do you see things moving forward for Gaza at this point?
Well, there is no coping mechanism here. There is no specific one. People are not given enough time, not even to mourn properly when they see their family members slaughtered in front of their eyes, let alone giving them the enough time, sufficient space in order to absorb what's happening. It's happening at a rapid pace that to the point you're just counting days, you're counting bodies, and that's the unfortunate reality. As how I see the prospects for Gaza in the future, at this point, it's quite dark. I mean, no one is doing enough in order to stop this madness. I mean, there's much talks going on, but on the ground, the reality tells a different stories. It indicates that we are on our way into something more horrific that is in the horizon. The fact that we're seeing more people are leaving their cities, are pushed into further displacement, they're being starved, they're being killed on daily basis. That's an indication that we are headed toward, I'm sorry to say this, but this is nothing short of annihilation.
Annihilation. Of course, I remember you reporting on people going home to Gaza City, and there was some euphoria and happiness like about 8 months ago. And then you reported on them being forcibly displaced again. Now, we reached out to some of your followers online and we asked them whether they had a comment for you, whether they had a question for you. And this is what they sent us.
Hani, you said your life doesn't get better by chance, it gets better by a change. And for me, you are the change. You are doing the work for all of us journalists who cannot report on this war on the ground to show the truth and the suffering of the civilians. Thank you. As someone who is living and reporting in Gaza, what do you wish for people on the outside truly understand about daily life under violent siege?
That's to you, Hani, from Jackie, your follower there.
Well, I mean, at this point, amplifying Palestinian voices seems to be the most effective way to keep the narrative going on. The tides are changing worldwide, and it's still not at the level of decision-making process, but at the grassroots level. We're seeing people everywhere, people who might not have any connection with the Palestinian, never talked to them, never had any opportunity to chat with them, but seeing what's going on, this is part of their humanity, that they're doing their part as a human in order to just set the alarm and just point out that there is something alarming going on here, because it needs to change. If it doesn't gets resolved properly in Gaza, it might repeat itself elsewhere. I think that's the pinnacle of humanity. You need to stop something wrong going on in one place in order to stop it from spilling everywhere. And unfortunately, the Israeli military, the Israeli politicians do not care about that. In fact, the way it's happening, it looks like they are more interested in having this genocide to spill over all over the region, and it dragged the whole entire region into more chaos and more tragedies that keep unfolding. But again, amplifying Palestinian voices, keep talking about them, keep telling their stories, keep them the headlines as of now, but also recognize their humanity as well. It's not just numbers that go in each passing day.
It is not just numbers. Absolutely, Hani. Thank you so much for coming on the stream and talking to us in a bit of a more personal way, other than the phenomenal reporting that you do on a daily basis for us. That is Hani Mahmoud in Deir al-Balah. Now, before we move on, he was talking there about keeping the Palestinian story in the headlines. Many prominent personalities have been using their online platform to raise awareness. Has it been working? Well, we asked Alana Hadid. She's a Palestinian American activist.
We need to do more. Palestinians are not numbers. We are not just headlines, and we are not charity. We are humans. We are not both sides. We deserve freedom. We deserve dignity. We deserve life. And genocide doesn't just happen in silence. It happens when the world chooses to look away. So don't look away. Stand with us. Amplify us. Act. Get out in the street. Do more, because our liberation is intrinsically tied with yours.
Now, I want to welcome to the conversation writer and activist Suzanne Abulhawa. Now, before we start our conversation, Suzanne, I want to play a clip of you a little earlier this year.
Someday, your impunity and your arrogance will end. Palestine will be free. She will be restored to her multi-religious, multi-ethnic, pluralistic glory. And you will either leave or you will finally learn to live with others as equals. Thank you.
Now, Suzanne, we cannot talk about Gaza without talking about the wider Palestinian story, right? Now, I chose that clip for a reason. You say so powerfully, someday Israel's impunity will end, and either they leave or they learn to live with others as equals. Now, this Israeli government has made it very clear it wants neither. How do you see things moving forward?
Well, it's not just the Israeli government. I think we need to be clear that this is the majority of Israeli society that supports this government. So I don't want to pretend that this government is an aberration. I think despite how horrific our situation is, I think that Palestinians actually are in the stronger position despite Israel's military superiority, their economic, their political superiority. And in fact, I think it's really, I'm glad you mentioned sort of zooming out and looking at the wider context. Because if you go back to the first Intifada, Israel ultimately, and with the United States, of course, imposed what became known as the Oslo Accords, not because they wanted peace, but they did that because Palestinians had gained an international moral capital, moral footing, images of the realities of life in Palestine under Israeli military rule were seeping out, and the truth was breaking through Israeli spin. And so the way to quiet it was to sort of come up with this, blueprint for permanent apartheid and permanent colonialism. And the same thing is happening now in a far more powerful, a far more grotesque and terrifying way with naked colonial genocide. They are now trying to impose an agreement that would again ensure not just apartheid, but actual naked colonial theft, colonial rule, and ethnic cleansing. So that's what we're facing, and I think it's important to see this moment in a historic context, not just in the context of Palestinian history, but in global history. If you look at what happened in South Africa, they refused to negotiate. They insisted on the full menu of human rights and the full menu of human dignity, and that's how they won the day. And right now, Palestine is in the far greater moral power position. Because of this, the
Suzanne,
world has finally...
Let me just, apologies for jumping in there, but I want to pick up on what you said. There has been a systematic degradation of the rights of Palestinians, hasn't there? Since, the establishment of the State of Israel, you had the first Intifada, the second Intifada, the Oslo Accords led nowhere. Many Palestinians say it actually increased the shackles. You actually wrote in some of your poetry when you talk about an apartheid system, some of the checkpoints that Palestinians have to cross from the occupied West Bank, like cattle cages. I covered that in Bethlehem. There's no other way to describe that. Your poetry and writing is so very strong. One line that jumped out at me was, "I am the wrong kind of human." How would you elaborate on that?
I mean, this is, this is a system of Jewish supremacy. That's another facet of white supremacy. And it says, Israel is an anachronism. Israel is something from the dark ages of naked colonialism that has been thrust into modern times, and is really pulling humanity back into this abyss of naked genocidal colonialism.
Why hasn't the world done more, Suzanne?
When you say the world, I mean, we're talking about ultimately the United States. We live in a multipolar world where unipolar world. Hopefully we are moving towards a multipolar world, but in a unipolar world where the greatest economic, military, and political force on the planet is working hand in hand with this genocidal colony. And everybody's afraid of the United States. Everyone is afraid of Israel. They're afraid of what they do because they are ruthless, because they have spread their tentacles throughout the world in nearly every aspect of human life. If you just look at the United States, I mean, just, simply because the truth was finally breaking through, they have bought up the remaining media outlets that have been revealing the truth to the masses. So there's an element of control that Zionists exert and have exerted historically, unbeknownst to most people.
It is an infrastructure that, as you say, does spread widespread. But there has been a bit of a shift when it comes to public opinion, hasn't there? We just want to run a poll with some numbers, Suzanne, looking at the Americans and Germans, basically, because these are the two countries that are the biggest supplier of military aid to Israel. In February of this year, 75% of Americans said they opposed the U.S. taking control of Gaza. A little later in the year, we had around 60% of Americans who said they opposed any more military aid to Israel. Then if we look at German public opinion, May of this year, 58% say they opposed military aid to Israel. And then also when Germans were asked whether they believe Israel is committing genocide, 62% of those said yes. Have you seen a change when it comes to world public opinion?
Look, these polls mean nothing ultimately because despite the illusion that Westerners live under, they do not live in democracies. And what their governments do when it comes to foreign policy has nothing to do with what they want. Otherwise, there would have never been an invasion of Iraq because the majority of people oppose that. It is, you ask me why aren't countries doing more, but the fact is they actually are. It's the governments that aren't. If you look at mass mobilization, which actually is the biggest threat right now to Israel, which is why they want to impose this sort of colonial governance over Gaza, because it is at a point where they will not be able to control it, not with owning TikTok, not with their oppressive new laws that are meant to silence Palestinians. If you look only at what happened, even just in Italy, 75 cities really just shutting down the whole country and the people supporting that. And I think that's going to spread to other countries as well throughout Europe and throughout the world.
Suzanne, I'm sorry to keep interrupting you, but we're out of time. And I want to get one last question to you because you are such a phenomenal writer and poet with your words. And despite of what Palestinians have gone through, you portray them, with love, with hope, with joy, with generosity, with discipline. What is it you want people to understand about the Palestinian spirit?
Look, I'm not interested in going through this romanticization of our suffering. I'm not here for that. I am interested in projecting our anger and our outrage and our mass mobilization. I am interested in galvanizing the masses to take to the streets, to join to push their unions, to shut things down. This is a horror unlike any horror humanity has ever seen before. And however Gaza goes, the world will go. This will set the tone for humanity's future. So that's what I want to convey. Such an important point. Suzanne Abulhawa, thank you so much for joining us here on The Stream. Well, that's it for me and the entire team at The Stream. And before we end our show today, we asked Palestinians in Gaza what message they had for you, a message for the world. We leave you with their words 2 years into this genocide.
ارحمونا منافقين
شعروا بنا ظلمتونا إسرائيل هي المجرمة والعالم يغطي هذا الإجرام.
الشعب الفلسطيني بموت مش ملاقي الأكل مش ملاقي شرب.
خسرنا كل شيء، خسرنا تعليم، خسرنا دور، كل شيء بكفي حرب خلاص.
يعني احنا بقينا عائله مجموعه في بيت واحد لكن تشتتنا والبيت راحوا يعني الامور صعبه جدا في غزه.
تعبنا، النزوح اتعبنا والحياه اتعبتنا والجوع اتعبنا وكل حاجه اتعبتنا.
أقل ما يمكن أن يقال عن هذا العالم المحيط أنه عالم متخاذل وغير صادق.
كل حاجه تعبنا وزهقنا من هالحرب، يعني مين ما زهقش منها.
بس لازم تخلص الحرب أي إشي عشان نخلص ونروح على العالم.